Canadian journalist, human rights champion, activist Sally Armstrong is my guest. She says women who are making change in the world from Senegal and Afghanistan to the USA and Canada are 1 part nerve, 2 parts knowledge, and 3 parts tenacity. Her stories of women who have made gains against murderous odds are wrapped in her amazing book written for both sexes. It's called Ascent of Women. So what about this bizarre notion of bountiful?
You know, I covered Bountiful probably 5 or 8 years ago. And I remember then speaking to the Attorney General of British Columbia. I said, what are you doing about this?
Was it Jeff Plant or Wally Opal?
It was Plant. It was Plant. And he said, well, I don't have any complaints about it. I said, what do you mean? The complaints all over the place. They're all over the paper. He said, I don't believe what they say about me in the paper. Why should I believe this? I thought it was a hopelessly irresponsible view of a very serious problem. But now they've had the reference case. And that brilliant judge, Bowman, I mean, he wrote pages and pages of harms done by polygamy.
Okay, so polygamy is legal or
no,
illegal. In
polygamy
Canada,
is illegal
it's
in Canada.
illegal.
It is a crime. It is a crime. End of story. But on top of that, which he established with his reference case, and he established it brilliantly, then he wrote the list of harms done, which was an add-on, but what he wrote applied to the whole world. So why is it nothing has been done? Nothing has happened in British Columbia.
Good question, because I know Wally Opal worked at this, and certainly Daphne's written more columns about it in an entire book on the abuses in Bountiful. And it's the extremist sect of the Mormon Church, Latter-day Saints, the fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, and they have child brides and
bazillions of wives. And Debbie Palmer was the first one to open up this story. And she told me, because she like all women, she uses a sense of humor. And she figured out at the end she was her own great-grandmother, if you started to do the matrimonial math, with what was going on at Bountiful. So she went public, and you would have thought that when that story was known by the public, people would go berserk. They would demand.
I interviewed her, and she talked about what the rules were, and that you had to keep sweet and do all the things and wear the funny clothes and all of that, and that and marry, live in polygamy, really.
Yeah, that's right. And the school, the Bountiful Secondary School, they were basically teaching racist education. And I think the school has been closed, and now the children are being homeschooled, which is as bad, if not worse. So
and the boys are abused too.
They are, because if you are going to have 25 wives, there's going to be an excess of boys, and they kick them out.
Yes, yes. And so the judgment came down from now Chief Justice Bowman. What happened? What stops it? The charter challenge? What is it?
You know, I've heard politicians say it would never survive a charter challenge. What a weak piece of talk that is. If our charter's not strong enough to protect women and children who are caught up in a sect, which is what it is, then our charter isn't worth the paper it's written on. Our charter is strong enough to handle this.
Of course, and we're all astounded by what's going on. Is it freedom of religion?
You know, that has already been tested. It's been been tested by religions who refuse blood transfusions.
Right.
And in the courts, it said freedom of religion is part of our freedom, but not when it overrides your health, not when it overrides your human rights. This has already been established in the court, so what's holding them back?
I have no idea. Where was the fire in the school? Was that in Saudi Arabia?
Yes, it was in Saudi Arabia.
And tell me that story.
That
horrendous. We're telling horrendous stories today, but for a good purpose.
Well, it's because the women in these places, look at the women in Saudi Arabia, are now really speaking up and saying, there's no evidence in our religion to say that you can treat me like this. The business of the fire was a private girls' school. A fire broke out, and it was early morning. The kids were in bed, and they raced out of their beds and tried to race out of the school, and the guards at the gate wouldn't let them leave the burning building because they didn't have their hijab on. And can you imagine? Some kids got out and they threw them back in because they didn't want them exposed to men on the street. So they let them stay in a fire. I mean, this caused a riot in Saudi Arabia. And they did have an inquiry even the royal family got involved. But at the end, they never nailed the police who are called the Vice and Virtue Police. We call them the Vice and Virtue Squad in Afghanistan. They never blamed them. They said that it shouldn't have happened. What happened was wrong. They were going to put in measures to stop it from ever happening again. But they didn't get rid of this Vice and Virtue.
So you mean you
Squad.
sleep with your headscarf, your hijab, in your bed just in case there's a fire? Because what the tragedy of all of that is that these girls could have escaped and lived, and how many died? 20 or so died because the firefighters literally wouldn't let them out of the school without
the
something.
firefighters would. It was these police.
Oh, the Vice and Virtue Police.
Yeah, that's right. That's who. And the girls who got out, they pushed them back in, claiming, what if they were in contact with a man on the street? Give me a break. You know, the use of these terms in order to oppress women is very bad for the whole country. We know that to be true now.
And the Muslim women I know and love, and the Muslim men, are as against this as we are.
Absolutely.
There's no question.
This is a small collection of thugs who've hijacked their religion for political opportunism, and now they're getting called on it.
So it's not in the Quran, it's not in the Torah, it's not in the
Nowhere.
Bible. However,
Nowhere.
Thomas Aquinas did say something many moons ago about women are made from defective sperm or something.
Right. And St. Paul is pretty bad for women,
Yeah,
too.
not so good, but we've progressed beyond that, I hope. India.
Well,
The
what a story.
Untouchables.
Well, the Untouchables, yes. You know, I tell a story in this book about a young woman called Gaurama, and she is a Dalit, which is the new word for untouchable. But it's a story about economics. They didn't have enough money to eat, so they borrowed money from the landlord. They are now in bonded labor, and they can't get out of it. So Gaurama tells me she has 2 cows. This is not exactly rocket science. She has 2 cows. She said, you know, if I was allowed to, I could milk those cows, and I could sell the milk, and I would make enough money to get my husband out of bonded labor, enough money to feed my family a better, more nutritious diet. But she's not allowed to. She even said to me, and if we got enough money, then we'd get a bull. Then I'd have new cows. You could see a young woman who had almost no opportunities already had this entrepreneurial plan, but she's not allowed. So then you look at the agriculture organization that did a study to show that, you know, the majority of farmers in Asia and Africa are women. They have poorer tools, less quality seeds, and not enough fertilizer. This study showed if you gave them the same tools that a man has, same quality seeds, and more fertilizer, they could feed 157 million more people. Who can argue with this? And why would anybody say, oh, well, you're a woman, we're just going to give you crummy tools and bad seed? How stupid is that?
And go get the water.
Yeah, and by the way, go get the water.
Well, when you read Ascent of Women, all of this seems so senseless and so horrid, and yet there's some hope in it.
There is, because the women have started to talk. And when they talk and ask questions like, where is it in the Quran that it says my daughter can't go to school, you start opening up a chapter that these women had never opened before. And you were mentioning about the social networks. So now, women wearing hijab are finding out that despite what the fundamentalists told them, women wearing jeans are not all whores. And women wearing jeans are finding out that women wearing hijab are not all oppressed and subjugated. They do have opinions, and they know how to change their own world.
Well, what about at another level, the HIV/AIDS pandemic, epidemic, the virgin cure, the idea of the virgin cure? If a man has HIV/AIDS and he sleeps with a virgin, he'll get rid of the AIDS.
Well, it's a nice way of putting it. If he rapes a child.
Yes, rapes a child. And his
view.
own child is okay too, apparently.
You know, this is the case in Kenya where 160 little girls are suing their government for failing to protect them from being raped. Fanny, that would never have happened before. And this case has a sidebar in Canada, because as you know, you covered it, this is the country where the women sued the government for failing to protect them and won. So the African women, human rights lawyers, one from Kenya, spoke to the Canadian women and said, how the heck did you do that? The Canadian women said, this is how we did it and we'll help you. And it's a constitution challenge. So in Kenya, these little kids are being raped every half hour because there is this demented view in sub-Saharan Africa that having sex with a little girl will cure you of HIV.
Yes, Stephen Lewis first told me about it. I believe it was Stephen Lewis, and his wife, Michelle Landsberg, writes about it on occasion. And didn't she write a book a long time ago called Writing the Revolution?
Yeah.
Something like
Well, she's
that.
got a new book, Writing the Revolution,
Was that
which
the
is
new one?
about all the old pieces.
All
yeah.
the old pieces.
Yeah.
Lots of work to do still, but we have in our mind, and we know it's happening. Some things are happening here with our Aboriginal women and others, but we just kind of don't know where to go.
We do, Fanny. People know now. It's like someone's removed the veil, and we know now what the facts are. It is a disgrace that Aboriginal women in Canada have been sidelined, that highway of tears. How could a country like this avoid a horrible incident like that? And now there's much more attention being brought to it, because as you said at the very beginning of the show, the women realize no one else is going to save them. They have to save themselves. But they're moving very, very rapidly. You have, the UN has now appointed Farida Shahid as the cultural rapporteur. First thing that came out of her mouth was, if your culture oppresses women, change it. There's, you know, we used to back off because we wanted to be politically correct, and the thugs in power would say to me, certainly, you're not from
Right.
here, you're not in our religion,
Right.
and you're not in our culture, it's none of your business. Well, it's all of our business. Saying that it's none of your business is, when it's a cultural violence, is an oxymoron. It's
Right.
it's
Well,
everybody's
and
business.
when women are educated, they can say things like no condom, no sex.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And this is not a book against men.
Absolutely
I
not.
just point that out
And it's
clearly.
not one religion over another,
No.
or one culture over another. Absolutely not. The book is about the fact that the economists and the policy makers have now discovered that women are the route to reducing poverty, to ending violence, and to improving the economy. This is something to celebrate.
I like that. Women are good for the economy.
Yeah.
This is good. Oh, nice to see you again.
You too, Fanny. Just a pleasure.
We'll dine soon. I know you have more to tell me. Sally Armstrong, Ascent of Women, Our Turn, Our Way, a remarkable story of worldwide change. And remember, you can catch this conversation on YouTube or follow us on Twitter at Fanny Kiefer. There will be many more impressive, brave, informed guests to come. Thanks for watching Shaw TV and being here with me today.